This program was first broadcast on Canterbury's community access radio station Plains FM 96.9 and was made with the assistance of New Zealand On Air.
It's time for Emergence News on Plains FM 96.9, citizen-made radio.
Tēnā koutou katoa, greetings and welcome to Emergence News coming to you from Christchurch, Aotearoa, New Zealand. We've been doing this programme now for nigh on 7 years, although the information has been out there for over 40 years, when Benjamin Creme first brought this story before the public all those years ago. He has sadly left us now. Well, sad for us, but maybe not for him.
Yeah. He's on a beach somewhere having a holiday.
Right, yes. And he inspired many of us to volunteer to disseminate this story to help give hope and understanding to any who cared to listen. For any of you who are hearing this for the first time, we share the news that Maitreya, the World Teacher for this age, is here with us on earth, along with a group of his disciples who are known as the Lords of Compassion. This particular age has been long prophesied and expected, and here we are. The World Teacher is living among us as a man among men. We are at the end of one age and the beginning of another, and all is chaos and confusion, as well as potential and opportunity. Over the years, we've given many of the Master's messages, and we're going to be looking today at one of them, which is called Maitreyas Task, and this came from Benjamin Creme by the Master. It is becoming ever clearer that the momentum of change is growing steadily throughout the world. Events follow so quickly on event that few can discern the logic of the sequence by which the new supplants the old. We, your elder brothers, recognise the inevitability of this process and watch it with satisfaction, knowing, as we do, that all is moving towards the more perfect expression of the plan. So many of us who have known this story for years will be feeling a little bit of doubt and reservation, because for some time now, as the world plunges more and more into chaos and confusion, the feeling is, well, if this is not the time for Maitreya to step forward, when is? As tensions increase and we all feel the stress of the great changes we are witnessing and experiencing, the longing for change is growing, even though at the same time it is tempting to want everything to go back to how it was, something familiar. However, more of us are awakening to the knowledge that we cannot go back. We must press forward. And this is the window of opportunity we have been waiting for. It is scary and exciting, and alongside the doubts and reservations, we like to proclaim that there is hope. And in the words of Julian of Norwich, all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well. So we're back in the studio today, which is really nice to be back here.
Thank goodness.
We're now in level 2 and we can, with proper social distancing, be together.
Keep away from me, Peter.
So we've got Peter and John here, as you can hear, no doubt.
I love you guys.
So what are you going to be talking about, John?
Well, I'm picking up on the second stanza of that message, Maitreya's Task. For men, however, this is a time of testing and trouble as they seek to understand and cope with the effects of their actions. So I'm going to unpack some ideas around that from Maitreya's story, basically.
Fabulous. And Peter?
Oh, yes. Well, I'm looking at some of the ideas that Maitreya mentions about us living more simply in our lives. And we have become very, very complex in our lives. Everything depends on this, that and the other. Having a job for 40 hours a week or 50 hours a week. You know, we need to rethink. We've got a chance to do a reset, so let's think about it.
Yes, great. Looking forward to it. Okay, John, let's hear from you.
Well, okay. So once again, I'm going to go back to where we started. For men, however, this is a time of testing and trouble as they seek to understand and cope with the effects of their actions. So I started doing some research, ended up in the Share International website, which is one of my favourite places. Message number 15, written way back in 1978. This is a message from Maitreya. My task is a simple one, to show you the way. You, my friends, have the difficult task of building a new world, a new country, a new truth. But together we shall triumph. And he wrote in February of the same year, message number 16, the period of test begins. That's quite ominous, really, isn't it? My plan is to place before you these two alternatives, to outline the possibilities and the pitfalls. The choice is yours. You, from your own divinely given free will, must decide. If you, as in my heart I know you will, decide for God, I shall take you to him, and together we shall place before him our life of service to him in the world. Many of my people already are doing so. It is this which confers on them the appellation of my beloved ones. So that the period of test begins. A little bit daunting, I thought. So I go back to 2011. Benjamin Creme talks a lot about this thing called the sword of cleavage, and we've discussed it on this program before. The sword of cleavage, and Maitreya starts with this, and well, actually it's the master through Benjamin Creme, and this is a real snapshot of today. From time to time there appears among men a figure who embodies the best or the worst that men can show. These individuals become the most loved or the most hated. In either case, they usually draw to themselves many followers or devotees. Such figures have enormous magnetic appeal for the majority of men, or on occasion are an inspiring example of destructive power on a large scale. The history books are full of examples of both types.
And we've certainly got them in the world today.
And we have them in the world today.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
And if you're aware of regional and local and global politics and global economics, you will see both of these individuals standing taller and taller. And of course, they are the opposing polarities of this choice that we must make. This sword of cleavage is creating the polarities. The sword of cleavage, the master goes on to say, is the energy we call love. Wielded by Maitreya, it sets brother against brother and tests the true divine consciousness of men everywhere. The ultimate aim of all evolution is to establish on earth the kingdom of God, and the sword of cleavage shows men the way.
So,
Shafia, you were going to say something.
I was going to say something. Why do you think love creates cleavage?
Because it strengthens that in us which means the most to us, right? So if I'm a hot rodder, I'm going to spend more time in my garage fiddling with cars. If I'm someone who thinks capitalism and commercialism and materialism are the way that humanity must go, I will drive towards that more strongly. If I think sharing and justice are more important, I will drive towards them more strongly. So it's an energetic tweaking that's going on globally.
So it's very different, isn't it, to the love that we tend to think of, which sort of is all embracing it. Sort of.
Well, Benjamin Creme, the
Yeah.
master, came through in 2014 and said, when the Christ said that he would return, in such a time as we think not, he would bring not soft words of spurious peace, but a sword, the sword of cleavage, which would separate father from son and brother from brother. It is precisely the action of the sword of cleavage that we are witnessing today. Maitreya's energy of love stimulates everyone. This is a great quote. The one who loves and works for justice and sharing, but also the one who causes the divisions, schisms, and greed in the world. In this way, through the clear opposition created by the sword of cleavage, men can arrive at a true choice for the future for all, the poor and the hungry, as well as the many of money and the destroyers of peace in the world. Each of us must choose on which side of that division we find our truth.
And it's really getting clearer, isn't it? The choice is getting so clear. I think that's probably what it is.
As you know, I have a very good friend that I discuss these issues with, and the cleavage between us has grown more and more. And I think I've finally said goodbye to that friendship. Because we are on different sides of this divide, and although we've had arguments and shared stories, the disagreements are becoming stronger. and I'm feeling more unpleasant afterwards. And I've suddenly thought, this person who I've known most of my adult life is on that side of the divide, and I'm on the other. And it's brother against brother.
Yeah.
And it's actually a painful thing for me to realise, but there is no longer now any point to continue the arguments and the fact-finding and trying to prove my point, or this person trying to prove their point. We're on different sides of a divide.
Yes, I think in the way that's, what Maitreya says, we have to act, don't we? It's not about trying to convince anybody. It's their free will to believe what they like, and for us to act, to build the world that we want to live in.
And we know that if people are fearful and are clinging to the way things used to be, facts and figures will not shake them free.
No, that's right.
And I've really felt it's been a waste of my energy to swap notes and swap facts and figures with my dear friend. And so I've just kind of stood back and gone, actually, we're on different sides of this divide.
And yet there can still be love there, can't there?
Oh, and there still is love.
Yes,
but,
that's right.
It's been a very difficult realisation. And this is the sword of cleavage.
Yes.
This is the challenge.
Yes, and I'm sure we all have examples of that in our lives.
Yeah. I've got another great quote, but we might have time for that later.
Oh, thanks, John. That's great. So let's hear from Peter now.
Thank you very much, Sophia. And yes, Maitreya predicts that mankind will learn to live more simply and have a more simple life once we all have food and shelter, healthcare, security, when we start to share the world's resources. And this, of course, will mean that we need to have made that decision of the sword of cleavage, John, doesn't it? It means that we already have decided that we need to share the world's resources.
Yes.
And, the way I see it is we need to make the most of this reset that we've been offered. We've got time to think about the impact of the COVID-19 on society, the loss of jobs, the impact on the tourist industry, the talk of universal benefit, the lack of official information on natural health, which has been surprising to me. I was listening to Dolores Cahill, a professor in viruses and vaccines. He talks from a scientific point of view with regards to health. We need to know that we need to strengthen our own immune system. She points out that we need the vitamin C and D and zinc, most important. Even a preliminary search of natural health will help us to understand the need for vitamin C. So many of our underlying health problems are due to our low level of scurvy. According to Linus Pauling, who had 2 Nobel Prizes, which vitamin C addresses, he said, the sensible exposure to the sun on the skin produces vitamin D. We need the vitamin C and also to stop heart problems. We've got so many heart problems in the world. He said vitamin C is low-level scurvy. We need to think about these things.
I guess this comes with our sort of processed food, isn't it, really? Since food has become a commodity.
That's right.
There's so much sugar and additives in there.
I was trying to think of an analogy, and I was thinking, I clean my house. I keep my house clean. Now, I know that in keeping my house clean, I keep bugs and insects and infection at bay by keeping my house clean. And I keep my body clean, and that helps with that protection.
Of course it does.
We've made such a mess of our home, our planet, that it's now toxic. It's now dirty.
Yes.
And we're picking up these bugs from places where we shouldn't be picking up bugs. So our house is not clean. Our home is not clean anymore.
Yes. And the virus has gone viral, but it has its place in our sort of ecosystem, doesn't it?
Yeah, in our system, Dolores Cahill says that, we've got thousands of viruses in us. It's really a matter of, somebody has said that 54% of our whole body is actually the biome, the viruses, the bacteria, the things that do the work, the things that, only 44% of us is what they call human. So it's amazing, really, that these we've had the opportunity really of thinking about these things during this lockdown, hasn't it?
So, Peter, the simpler life that Maitreya talks about, how are we going to manage that? Where does that...
Well, we've talked about growing stuff ourselves, as we used to do. Our parents used to all have gardens.
Yep. Yes.
Didn't they?
Well, I grew up in Christchurch in the 60s.
Yeah.
We had a 1/4 acre section, and Dad grew a lot of our vegetables. And we had chickens, and they ate the scraps. And
they were free range as well.
Yeah, they were free range, and we got eggs.
Yeah.
And I think people are starting to come back to that,
They are. This
the
has been
growth
a
of
conversation,
community
hasn't it?
gardens, and isn't it? And,
Yes.
And that's the simpler life.
It is the simpler life.
And in our street, when Dad grew too many marrows one year, I can tell you how to eat marrow. We had marrow for breakfast, lunch, dessert, dinner. I had marrow sandwiches. You can't get me to walk into a marrow room now. But anyway, he grew too many. So they went over the fence to the neighbours.
Yes.
And we swapped food. We shared the produce around the neighbourhood.
Yes.
And that's the simpler life. We're familiar with it in New Zealand.
Yes.
It is not unfamiliar to us.
No, but I mean, if people could well give up 2 or 3 hours a week of work, earning money, just to benefit from their own garden, couldn't they?
And then you're getting the fresh air and the exercise.
They've
And
got it there. They need that much less food. They'd be paying less taxes. They'd be, this sort of goes on, doesn't it?
Yes.
Yes. And, of course, the loss of jobs is another hot topic. And for too long, we've thought that 40 hours was something that we can't change. Well, I disagree. And I see people now, my daughter, in fact, in Wellington, has been working from home during the lockdown, and she actually loves it, and she said, if she could do just a couple of days at work and the rest at home, she'd be more productive, get things done, and it's sort of thing that we've got to really think about, I think.
Well, I've really noticed a difference in Christchurch, because a couple of times I've been looking after my granddaughter and driving across at the peak hour, and it's actually been quite good, because a lot of people are still working at home.
Yes.
And so there isn't so much traffic around, and that's obviously going to be good for the atmosphere and for climate change. And so I think that's and I think a lot of firms are beginning to feel now, actually, whereas they wouldn't have entertained that before. You had to go to work. Now I think a lot of firms are beginning to think, well, it's okay, and they haven't lost productivity.
And this idea of UBI's come back again, hasn't it? We've talked about universal basic income. We've talked about that the state generates some funds for you just because you're a Kiwi or you're an American, and you get X amount of dollars per year, and that frees up people, and it frees up the welfare system.
That's right. And I mean, if we ended up cutting down our hours to 2 or 3 days a week, and there was a top up to make sure that we were still okay, I think that they could work well. It would be an interim measure for the universal benefit.
Yeah, and certainly technology has always had an impact on employment. So when I left high school, there was a whole industry called clerical industry, right? You became a clerk, you worked in the clerical environment. Well, that went as soon as computers.
It was just a paper shuffling exercise, wasn't it?
In my life, industry has changed employment, and it's going to happen again. Electric vehicles, self-drive cars will change employment again. And these things are with us now. The solar-powered industry will change the employment model. And UBI will help that transition.
Yes.
And Krem has said in his writings that we need to get used to leisure. We need to understand the value of leisure.
That was my next sentence.
Sorry, Peter, I wasn't reading your notes.
Well, it was just the masters have been talking about this, John.
For a long time,
And the need for leisure time to stimulate our creativity. And you see this on the TV, all the people doing their sports at home. And, I mean, that has been absolutely hilarious.
Yes, that's right.
People have come up with all sorts of things. I saw one guy kicking a tiny little ball into a net, and the cat was there catching it.
I watched that.
It was brilliant.
How would you train a cat to do that?
That's amazing. Anyway, so in New Zealand, of course, we've got a huge investment in tourism. And although the smaller numbers might be desirable to some people, there's no need to close the door on this activity. If tourists were checked before they boarded the plane, then scanned on arrival, we could ensure their health as ours as well. We already have the technology, both the heat sensors, aura reading, and I'm sure all sorts of other ways of checking people as they walk through the door. You know, this is not going to be new stuff. This is all within our present ability. And I see the big losses of jobs in the building industry after the panic about the virus, and see at the same time opportunities to redeploy these people in addressing the housing shortage. I remember talking with a fellow builder from the Philippines. He told me of a factory there that made prefab houses. Many spent some months there in the factory, then they went to Japan to assemble the houses for 3 years. A team of 4 with a tractor crane assembled 2 houses a week. So we could do this. We have the materials here to do it. We have a lot of ideas we could explore and adapt to New Zealand standards. There's absolutely no need for anyone to be homeless in New Zealand. And this is one of
So
Maitreya's
true.
key points.
Yeah.
You know, house the homeless.
Yeah.
And they have been housed, haven't they, over the COVID? And it's going to be interesting. I can't see that the government could actually let them go back on the streets, especially as it's winter.
No.
That's going to be an interesting debate, isn't it?
It is going to be
And
interesting.
we've got an election coming up.
Yes.
And this sort of cleavage, I think, will dictate the election to some degree.
Yes.
We'll see which side the majority of New Zealanders are on.
Yeah.
And they're clearly represented in New Zealand. So, yeah, that's really exciting stuff happening here between the end now and the end of the year.
Yes. Looking forward to seeing what happens and how it's going to go.
This is the Emergence News on Plains FM. For more information, go to shareinternational.org.
So you had something else you wanted to add
Well,
into?
when I was scurrying around the Share International website, I came across this article from The Master, 2005. I cannot believe the date on some of this stuff, how topical it is, right?
Yeah.
It's called The End of Darkness, and there's a little snippet here. Nowhere is division and disharmony more prevalent than on planet Earth. Bearing in mind the Masters have a solar
Yes.
a vision, right?
Yeah.
No other planet of our system is so immersed in competition, so ignorant of the benefits of cooperation. Nowhere else is seen the results of such folly. Anxiety, illness of all kinds, which we're dealing with, wealth and poverty, side by side, insecurity and war. The emotion's mind, by the way. Why should this be so? Why should the inhabitants of this most richly fertile world quarrel so over its ownership? To some extent, the answer lies in the very richness of Earth's resources. Earth is the most densely material of worlds, and for long ages men have been enthralled to its material wealth and have fought and competed for its control. This has brought the human kingdom, and with it the animal, to the verge of destruction. It is this fact, above all, which has prompted Maitreya's decision to return with his group to the everyday world, at least 1,000 years ahead of the planned date. His aim is to coax men back from the brink, to show them how dangerous and destructive is their lust for power, their greed and competition. And we are right at that brink now.
We are, aren't we?
Yep.
Yes, that's really interesting because it's we have such a beautiful world, and I think people, you see on social media all these beautiful pictures of how amazing this world is,
Yes.
and yet there's so much ugliness as well.
So much ugliness.
Yes. So how do we overcome that?
Yeah, justice and sharing.
Justice and sharing.
Cooperation, very much.
Yeah.
You're going to finish for us there with a little bit, have you got, Shafia?
Yeah. Should we finish a little bit with Maitreya's Task?
Yes.
Each new age brings into the world new and unfamiliar forces, which gradually impose themselves on men and invoke response. Thus it is today, as men search dimly for the new direction which the new age energies demand of them. Some there are who sense the way and seek to educate their brothers in the required action. Many, though, are afraid of change and see only an impending chaos and breakdown if the radicals have their way. Into this divided world has come the Christ. His is the task to reconcile these disparate groups and to bring order out of the present confusion and tumult. That his is not an easy task should be apparent to all. That the gulf between the groups is vast and entrenched is equally clear. How then must he work to bring the chasm between the old and fearful and the burgeoning new? How, too, can he counter the deep materialism which is the hallmark of the present time? How deal with the intolerance of the religious groups and help them to experience unity? Presenting himself as a man among men, Maitreya will make no claims, demand no allegiance. Simple and direct will be his approach, moderate and calm his manner. His clarity of mind will arrest attention. His wisdom will overcome men's fears. His sincerity of utterance will melt men's hearts and remove the burden of hate and greed. Thus will men experience a new appearance of divinity, one which includes them in its manifestation and sees no distance or separation. As the embodiment of the agent of cosmic power and love, Maitreya will open the hearts of all who can respond, and turning men from the fear and division of the past, ready them for the glory of the future.
All this information can be found on the Share International website, www.share-international.org. Scorpio Books in Christchurch carries the magazine and some books. And also don't forget the podcasts, which are available on the Plains FM website.
We welcome your comments, questions and feedback. Please contact us at emergencenews@gmail.com.
The opportunity to join our transmission is available Monday and Wednesday evenings and Thursday mornings, which gives us the possibility to do a service meditation in conjunction with Masters.